Welcome back. You're watching Live from Paris on France 24, and we're going to find out now what's making the buzz in the French press today with Media Watch France, presented today by Rebecca Bowring. Good evening to you, Rebecca.
Good evening, Laura.
Now, we're starting with a speech Nicolas Sarkozy made 1 year ago this week in Grenoble, one of the most controversial addresses he's made since he came to power. Why are we talking about it now?
Well, the French press, Laura, is doing what they call a bilan, which is a kind of review of how successful that policy was. It was very incendiary at the time. It provoked a real furor here in France and across Europe. Sarkozy announced that he wanted to dismantle 300 illegal Roma settler camps in France during the month of August alone. Over 1,000 immigrants were sent back to Eastern Europe. Now, France was criticised for being racist. It was criticised for singling out the Roma minority. And Sarko was seen as swinging to the right, trying to keep down the rise of the Front National, the National Front Party. But the government did stick to its guns in the face of all that controversy. And now, today, the French media is picking up on a report that's come out from an NGO. They're known as Médecins du Monde, Doctors of the World, and they're commenting on really the kind of health implications of these deportations. So if we take a look at Le Point magazine's website, they're quoting Médecins du Monde. They're saying pressure and police intimidation have been further strengthened, and Roma have become a sort of authorised scapegoat. And they really criticise the French government for having seized upon the Roma and using them in a way to sort of beef up to inflate their anti-immigration, illegal immigration figures.
The European Union had some things to say about it as well, if I remember rightly.
That's right. It was said that there were links drawn, we could say, between the deportations and what happened during the Second World War. Right. So it was obviously something that really riled heads of state across Europe. Let's take a look at the paper 20 minutes, 20 minutes, because it comments on how difficult Roma's living conditions have become since this policy was introduced. Many of them live in slums or squatter settlements. They live in dilapidated caravans. There's a risk of disease. There's no electricity and running water quite often. So people's lives have become very, very hazardous. Repeated expulsions, it says, and no help with relocation condemns them to extremely poor living conditions. But all of this for little or nothing. This is what the report is primarily pointing out. In fact, the expulsion of Roma hasn't actually changed the situation here in France at all. The newspaper The Express says that more than 9,000 Roma of about 15,000 living in France were expelled during 2010. That's according to the Interior Ministry. But it hasn't stopped Roma, most of whom are European citizens, from coming back to France. They have the right to do so. So, in fact, all it's done is worsen their living conditions here in France, and it hasn't done anything to solve the problem.
OK, all right. Well, moving on to something completely different, because a woman at a supermarket's been fired for allegedly stealing vegetables.
Peggy Gerard, 35 years old, is a vegetable controversy for you, Laura. She was let go for gross misconduct. What actually happened was, according to Voix du Nord and the Northern Voice newspaper, that her boss found withered salads, and it's very important that they were withered, leeks and parsley in her car, which he then said, he accused her of stealing them from the store. But she replied, well, no, actually, I bought them from an independent vegetable seller, vegetable grower, and in fact, they were for my rabbits.
What was he doing looking in her car anyway?
I don't know. He was poking around the back of her car, and he found that what she says these were to feed her rabbits. So right. She even provided, according to Le Figaro newspaper, some documentation that proves that she bought this veg the previous evening, but to no avail. She was let go. But she has commented saying, and I don't know what you think about this, Laura, that nobody really said anything. A blind eye was turned to the fact that she was throwing away 300 euros worth of produce pretty much every single day. That's the kind of wasteful nature,
bit of a waste,
I suppose,
not want not.
Exactly.
Policy there,
so she
isn't it?
says, no, I didn't steal, but so what if I did, when these items weren't then going to be put onto a stand and sold?
And the big papers have picked this up, interestingly.
Yes, in fact, Le Monde is even talking about this and drawing a link between this particular incident and one that happened at a Monoprix store. So this most recent one was at an Ed store. Monoprix, another supermarket chain here. In Marseille, a man was fired because he got tried to get 2 salads and 6 melons out of a bin. There was a huge outcry, and people said, well, quite frankly, you're never going to sell that produce again. So Monoprix had to rethink its strategy and then rehired the man. But certainly there's a very fine line between when perishable goods become refuse.
OK, all right. Well, we've been talking a lot about Brittany this week. We were talking about meteorites yesterday, weren't we? Now we're talking about mysterious deaths of wild boars.
It all goes on in Brittany, doesn't it? A scourge of green algae, which is a problem that we've had in Brittany before, actually. It's it's prompted an outpouring of passion, you could say, in the paper.
Because it's
West
ruining
France.
the tourist season in some parts of the region.
It is, and it's certainly ruining gastronomy in that area, because 5 more wild boar were found dead this morning in an area of the Côte d'Amour region, 15 during the past month. And even though there will be autopsies, people are pointing the finger at green algae because it produces a kind of toxic gas when it breaks down, and people are worried not only for the wild boar but for themselves, saying, well, you know, a couple of dogs died back in 2009 because of this algae. Could it be posing a health risk to us?
Stay away from the green stuff is the message there. All right, now just time to talk about Dominic Strauss-Kahn, who's obviously fighting 2 sex assault cases at the moment, but he does have one fan who's written a song about him.
Yeah, she has. Her name's Clara. She's a teenager. I'm not sure how old, but her video clip is going viral here. And she's a big supporter of Dominic Strauss-Kahn. She says she's convinced of his innocence and she wants to make music about that, and that these charges against him, according to her, are all a big misunderstanding. Let's take a listen to her song, DSK is Not Guilty. I seem to have a little problem with that clip.
That's a shame. We want to listen to the clip.
Can we listen to? Yeah, let's take a listen to it.
No.
Ne t'inquiète pas, tu n'iras pas en prison. La justice sera dire non. Yeah.
Well, you could say, Laura, full marks for originality, if not for vocal talent, but no idea how seriously she expects to be taken with that, whether it was a prank or whether she's a true supporter of DSK.
I think she's singing from the heart there, from the looks of it. All right, Rebecca Bering, many thanks indeed. That's it for Media Watch France. Up next, it's Web News.